Many of you have asked me about my trees from the past. You will know that I've been dabbling in bonsai since 1967. But it was only in the mid-70s that I started getting really involved and deeply attached to bonsai as a hobby and as a pastime. So the mid-70s was the time when I started making bonsai seriously and also buying serious trees. This is a larch which I still have. As many of you will know also that I've written 9 or 10 books, and this is the first ever book I wrote. This is the Italian version, and I keep reminding people that I'm sure you viewers from different parts of the world will have come across my books in your own language, because most of my books are in 8 languages, English and 7 European languages, and this is the Italian version. So in this book, which was written in 1984, and the photographs in here were taken in 1982 or 83. So if you home in close, this is the same larch that you see here. This photograph was taken in 1982, I think it was, because the book was written in 84. This is my second book, which you all know, Bonsai Masterclass, one of my favorite books and most people's favorite books. And even in this book, you will see that this larch is documented how it started. Again, if you home in on this, it was collected by me in 1974. And when it was collected, it was 74, 76, yeah, that very hot summer. And we collected it in Scotland from a bog, that means a swamp, and all the trees were dying because it was literally growing in water. And because it was a very hot year, the swamp had dried out and all the trees were half dead. So when I collected it, if you come close, this is what the tree looked like. It had a tall leader there, and the tall leader, like that, was the leader which died, and only a side branch was alive. This is literally, after collecting, I put it straight in a bonsai pot. Over the years, I carved that leader and made it look like this and made it a windswept tree. So for many, many years, this tree continued to be a windswept tree like this. But remember, it was made in 1974-76, so which is more than 50 years ago. And over the years, the wood has rotted away. And because it rotted, it finally broke off. I used to keep the piece of dead wood, but I think I've thrown it away now, or some of the staff may have thrown it away. And I decided to make it a semi-cascade tree. So this is the history of the tree. When you think that this was made more than 50 years ago, much older than a lot of my viewers, I bet, and it's still going strong. One of my favorite trees. Number of people have asked to buy it, but I will not sell it for sentimental reasons. So this is the tree after all those years. And every time a branch dies, I can always refine it or make driftwood from it. But for the most part, it is still very much alive. And if I made it 50 or more years ago, I would say this tree is easily 80 years old, because when I collected it, it was growing in swamp and it was about 4 foot tall. So anything from 70 to 80 years is the genuine age of this tree. So this is my famous windswept larch, which is now a semi-cascade larch. So this is the first tree I'm going to talk about. I have a lot of other trees which are equally well known to most of you because they appear in all my books. I won't talk about all of them in one go because there are quite a few trees that I still have, but I won't necessarily cover them in this video. Now the second tree I want to show you is another famous tree, and it's hard to thumb through all the pages, but I can assure you if you thumb through the books you will find it, but I know that it's in this book. So what I want to show you is this one. So this book, if it was written in 1986, this photograph was taken in 1984. This is a black pine. And I'm going to take you to the very tree. And this is the self-same tree. You see how it leans? And these two branches, this branch and this branch, has since died because I wanted to make it a bigger tree. So the tree has more than doubled in height since I purchased it. This tree I think I must have purchased in 1978 or 79. So again, I've owned it for about 45 or 46 years. And I've grown it into this size, and I'll keep it finally at this size. So those branches have been ginned, but the tree is going to be this size. So this is what this tree looks like today. There's a very interesting story behind this tree, because my first ever Chelsea Flower Show in 1983, I displayed this tree along with a lot of other trees. And on that occasion, when I put this tree on display, it was on a beautiful Japanese table, and it was one of the very nice exhibits at that stand of mine in Chelsea 1983. Just before the show started, on the Members' Day, a guy came up to me and said to me that his client, he wasn't the purchaser, he was only the negotiator, the middleman. He said, my client has seen this tree and he would like to buy that tree off you. And he pulled out a checkbook from his pocket. He said, I've got a checkbook here. He's prepared to pay anything for that tree because he's got a stand very similar to your bonsai display stand. And he's got a scroll as well, which will go very nicely with this tree. So he wants to buy this tree. So he said, will you sell it to me? So I said, who's the client and where's it going to? So he says, I can't tell you the name of the client because he's a very private person. But all I can say is he wants to fly it back to the Middle East. I won't mention this country because it will give you a clue. It's going to go to the Middle East, a very hot country in the Middle East. So I said, it won't survive in the Middle East. He said, no, don't worry. He's going to put it in an air-conditioned room in his office. I said straight away, that's not the environment for this tree. So I said, I'm sorry, I can't sell it to you. So he was a bit annoyed. He said, I'm giving you a check, endless amounts of money, and you don't want to sell it to me. So I said, I value this tree more than the money that I will get for it. So that is the story of this tree. My first ever display at the Chelsea Flower Show, someone wanted to buy it, but I refused to sell it. I've kept it for all these years because it's one of my favorite trees and I've been developing it over the years. And so every story is behind many of these bonsai. This is a very interesting story which I like to tell, and I'm very proud I never sold it. So we will watch this tree as it progresses. So that is the famous black pine. The history of this tree, by the way, is not a collected tree, but it was imported from Japan in 1962. Like many of the trees in my collection, they were imported from Japan in 1962 by a company called Bromingen Young. And I'm going to go to another tree and I'll recount the story because they all come from the same source. Now this is another very, very famous tree. And as with all my famous trees, I have shown this tree in all my books. So let us go to the second book, Bonsai Masterclass, that favorite book of mine. And this is the tree in that book. This photograph was taken in 1983 or 84, and it was in a fiberglass pot. This was made of fiberglass and plywood, very shallow pot. And this is what the tree looked like then. Okay? So this photograph taken 1983 or 84. Now, this is my first book, which was written in 84. So the photograph is even earlier than that. So let's have a look at this picture in this book. So this is the first book. And if you home in again, this tree has always been in this pot for many, many years. So this is the tree there. And look at the tree now. Not only that, it is so famous that I appeared in the Independent newspaper one of the 3 important British newspapers. And this photograph was taken in 1989 when I had a lot of hair and I looked like that. And they featured me and this tree in a full-page article in the Independent newspaper. I'm still wearing my welly boots, as you can see. So let me tell you the history of this tree. This tree, believe it or not, is reputed to be about 500 years old. It's only reputed to be 500 years old. It's anyone's guess. For most people, I think it would be quite safe to say it is at least 300 years old. And the history of this tree begins in the UK in 1962. In 1962, which is what, 63 years ago, it was imported by a company called Bromwich and Young. That was the first company in the UK that imported bonsai in not a large way. They used to bring in like 5 or 6 boxes of bonsai each year, not even, I would say, half a container. And they used to sell bonsai. So that was the only source of getting imported bonsai. And the director of this company imported this tree for his own use. He imported the tree in 1962, and it was supposed to be 300 to 500 years old at that time. And it came from the city of Hiroshima, where the bomb fell. And what happened after that was that he kept it for maybe 5 years, from 62 to 67 or 68, and he sold it on to the chairman of the British Bonsai Association. I was a member of the British Bonsai Association at that time, and I went on to become the chairman in 1980 to 87. But between the years of 67 or so, I think he purchased it in 67, and he kept it till about 1974, about 7 years. And in 74 or 75, he offered this tree to me, and I purchased it in 1975 when I was living in Purley. And I have pictures of it still in my Purley garden, chained with large galvanized iron chains for fear of theft. And I had 2 Doberman dogs to look after this tree. So valuable was this tree. But it's not the most valuable tree on the nursery. But over the years, it has changed hands. Someone purchased it and returned it to me. So this is the story of this tree. So when you think that it's been in this country for 63 years, is almost 3/4 of a century. So when we say that it's anything from 300 to 500 years old, I don't think it is stretching the imagination too much. When you think it's spent here nearly 70 years in the UK, so to have spent 300 years in Japan or 500 years in Japan is quite plausible. So this is the very famous Juniper rigida. You must be wondering why it is left to grow like this. When I got it back a few years ago, it was in a very sorry state, and I'm trying to revive the tree to make it strong. And when it gets strong, I will restyle it again and trim it and keep it tidy again. So this is the story of this famous 300 to 500 year old needle juniper, Juniper rigida. So that is the story of this 3rd famous bonsai that I own. I will talk one more tree, and then I will call it a day. This is another of my famous trees, and its claim to fame is that it was used as the cover tree for Bonsai Masterclass. If you home in close to this picture here of the tree on the cover, it is by no means a good bonsai. It is one of the worst bonsai that I had in my collection. Now, when people write books, people don't realize that you have very little control over the book when it goes to a publisher. The publisher will do whatever they like and whatever they think will sell the book. So when I wrote this book in 1986, they came to, I was at Herons at the time. I had just moved to Herons in December of 85. So I wrote it in the spring of 86, in February, March. And they came on the nursery and they looked around And the only evergreen tree that they could find was this one in a blue pot. So they chose this tree and photographed it on a table, which I still have. I still have that table. And they decided to use this as the cover for this book. I hated this tree because it is by no means a good tree. It is a very bad tree. So I asked them, why do you want to use this as the cover for this book? And they turned around and said to me, because it's in a blue pot. To begin with, evergreens are seldom in blue pots, but that was the only pot I had. So they said a blue pot would make this book very saleable. So this is the story of how this tree was used on the cover of Bonsai Masterclass. Now, this was a tree that I collected when it was a very thin seedling. It could have been only like ½ an inch thick, and it was collected from a local wood where they were clearing the roadside for making a motorway. And I can tell you it was part of the M25 motorway, which was being made around about that time. The M25 was made around 1978, 79, and it was opened in 1980. So I collected this little tree in 1980, and I started training it in this semi-cascade or cascade style. So this is how it started, and this is 5 or 6 years after I started making the tree. So it is still quite rough, it hadn't been refined. Now you must be wondering why this tree is leaning this way and this tree is leaning that way. What they did, again these publishers are very clever, they took a photograph and they reversed the image. They reversed the image with a slide because if they wanted to put the pot there, it would look better hanging this way. So they changed the picture to make it this way. So this picture is back to front. It's not the real tree as you would see in real life. So let me explain something about this tree. It was originally a cascade tree, and this in fact was a cascade branch. But as most of you will know, cascade trees, when you try to grow a cascade well, the part that goes down seldom survives for long because it's very hard to send nutrients below. All the nutrients go to the top of the tree. So the bottom part of the tree died. So we've ginned those parts out, and over the years we've changed it around. So although you may think that this tree is like this, as in the book, it is not really. This is not really how the tree should be. The tree was really the other way around. The other way around. And this branch here is this branch, and this branch here is that branch. The original cascade part died. So this is the story of the tree for Bonsai Masterclass. So I've talked about the larch, the black pine, the rigida, and this number 4. And we have some other trees. As and when I have time to dig them out, I will talk about some other trees that appear in my books. Because many of you have been wondering, what has happened to some of these trees? Some of them I have sold, but the ones that I haven't sold, this is what it looks like. And mind you, I had quite a few very nice specimens, but my first 2 books, I deliberately did not want to show too many imported trees, because my books, even in those days, were like my YouTube videos, where I tried to make it accessible and friendly to people. I wanted to show what you could do with very simple trees and very simple plants to make into bonsai. So that is the story of those 4 bonsai.